Dear all, welcome to the class of International Economics. In the last few classes, we were discussing international trade theories, and we have also discussed absolute advantage theory, which is developed by Adam Smith. In that absolute advantage theory, we also saw so many limitations of the theory because it was based on absolute cost advantage. So that word itself, absolute itself, is a limitation of that theory. So we are trying to elaborate that cost advantage through the Ricardo's ideas or Ricardo's theory, which is comparative advantage theory. So as you know, it is also the part of classical theories of trade, international trade, and it is also the part of comparative advantage theories. So it is the second one in comparative advantage theories. So it's also based on comparative cost advantage. So the cost is important component both in Ricardo's analysis and also in Adam Smith's analysis. Okay, so today's discussion we will be explaining with an example what is Ricardo's comparative advantage theory says. Then we will try to explain with an example. Then finally we will check the limitations of Ricardo's approach. So, comparative advantage theory. Adam Smith's theory prevailed for 4 decades, and that theory itself made a revolution because it was discussed so much. And we can also say that it was the first well-developed international trade theory. So it was prevailed for around 4 decades. Then after that, Ricardo has come up with comparative advantage theory. Ricardo born in 1772 and his span was 1772 to 1823. He formulated comparative advantage theory in 1817 in his book Principles of Political Economy and Taxation. So there are a few other books also on as named Principles of Political Economy. Do you remember any of author? J.S. Mill has a famous book as Principles of Political Economy, but this is Principles of Political Economy and Taxation. It is a book which is written by David Ricardo. So this is the his book Principles of Political Economy and Taxation. So in this book only he has developed this concept of comparative advantage theory. So what comparative advantage theory talks about trade. So in the Adam Smith's approach, even with the absolute disadvantage, still there is a basis for mutual benefit trade. That is the idea of Ricardo. In the Adam Smith analysis, we have seen that there is a possibility of trade if there is an absolute advantage in producing commodities for a few countries, or we can say if it is two nations approach. If both nations has absolute advantage in producing any of the product, any of the commodity, then there is a possibility of trade between these two countries. That was the analysis in Adam Smith. But here, even with the absolute disadvantage, suppose that one country has disadvantage in producing both the commodities, then in Adam Smith's analysis trade is not possible. But here still there is a basis for mutual beneficial trade. That is Ricardo's comparative advantage theory. So what Ricardo says exactly? The nation should specialize in the production and export of the commodity in which its absolute disadvantage is smaller. So suppose that country has disadvantage in producing both the commodities. Okay, so the nation should specialize in the production and export of the commodity in which its absolute disadvantage is smaller, which means it is a commodity of its comparative advantage, and import the commodity in which its absolute disadvantage is greater. So if the disadvantage is greater, then they should go for importing of that product. So this is the commodity of its comparative disadvantage. So this theory is based on comparative advantage and comparative disadvantage, not absolute as in Adam Smith's analysis. So if a country has a comparative advantage in producing one commodity, they should specialize in the production and they should export it. And if they have a comparative disadvantage in producing one commodity, they should import that product. This is the very simple idea. So absolute disadvantage is smaller means it is a commodity of comparative advantage, and absolute disadvantage is greater means it is a commodity of comparative disadvantage. So Ricardo says if the comparative advantage is greater, they should specialize in it and they should export it. Okay, I hope this idea is clear. So they as in the case of cloth and wheat, which is a famous example. So if one country has a comparative advantage in producing wheat, then they should specialize it in and they should export it. If they have a comparative disadvantage in producing cloth, they should import it. Very simple example. So we will explain what is this comparative advantage or comparative cost advantage. We will explain with an example, then I think it will be clear. But before going to the example, let me tell you what are the assumptions of Ricardo's trade theory, assumptions of Ricardo's approach. Firstly, as we seen in the absolute cost advantage theory or absolute advantage theory, most of the assumptions are also here. See, there are two nations, two commodity, no need to explain it. And labor is homogeneous and it is only the factor of production. In the absolute cost advantage, we have made an assumption of labor is only factor of production. But here, one more assumption is added, labor is homogeneous. What is labor is homogeneous means? The productivity, the productive capacity of all the labors might be different. Then we will say that the labors are heterogeneous. But here, labor is homogeneous means the productivity of all the labors and different ability of different labors are same. So all the labors are same in productive capacity and in their ability. So they are like homogeneous or equal in several aspects. That's why we are saying labor is homogeneous and it is only the factor of production. So this is also classical theory, so you should expect that the labor is the only factor of production, because we have already said that this is the assumption of classicals. And production technology is constant, or we can say it is given. This is a new assumption. Production technology, it may, there might be different production technologies like capital intensive, labor intensive, or it might be combination of both, or it can be used in some varieties of different different kind of technology, or it can be any way, any manner. So but here we are assuming that this production technology is constant or given for both the nations. Okay, So that is the third assumption. Then fourthly, the value of commodity is determined only by the labor cost. That is also we discussed in the in the absolute cost advantage. And the other thing, labor supply is given and fully employed in both countries. What it means? Labor supply is given and all have employment, all are employed or fully employed. It is an assumption of full employment, which is nothing but the assumption of all classicals. They have talked about full employment and also laissez-faire. Okay, so there is there is nothing new in this assumption. So labor is given, labor supply of labor is given, and all are employed. The labor is freely mobile within country and immobile between the countries. This is also an assumption in all classicals. Okay, so in the country only the labor can move perfectly and immobile between the countries. There is not any possibility of migration from one country to another country for any purpose. So there is not any possibility, but there is a freedom to move within the country. So this is another assumption. Then production of X and Y, we said that there are two commodities. Suppose that it is X and Y is subject to constant return and constant cost. Constant costs. So what is that there are different types of diminishing returns and increasing return and constant return, but here they are assuming there is only possibility of constant return and also constant cost. So there is no any possibility of increasing cost or decreasing cost. Okay, so then next is market for both goods are perfectly competitive. So as in the case of classical theory, they believe in perfect competition. So market for both goods are perfectly competitive. Then only there is a possibility of determination of price and quantity according to the demand and supply. So markets for both goods are perfectly competitive. So there is no any intervention by the government, as we said, laissez-faire. Okay, and next is free trade and no trade barriers. Okay, then finally no transportation cost, because transportation cost is included here, then everything will be collapsed. Their theory might be collapsed. So there is no transportation cost also. So these are the assumptions of classical theory. So you should note this assumption, but some of the assumptions are added, but most of the assumptions are similar with the absolute cost advantage theory. Then we will tell, we already explained the theory, but we will explain with an example. So the the cost of one product or commodity is measured on the basis of labor cost, that is So the labor cost man hours per unit of output is given here, and there are two commodities, commodity X and Y. There are two countries, A and B. So to produce 1 unit of commodity X, A needs 30 man hours, but B needs 60 man hours. So it means that the cost of production of commodity X is high in country B. Alright, 30, 60, then 60 is high. Then if we are talking in absolute advantage, A has absolute advantage, right? I leave about comparative for the time being, but absolute advantage, A has the absolute advantage in producing X. Then what about Y? 45 man hours is needed to produce 1 unit of Y in country A, 45. Then 50 man hours is needed to produce 1 unit of Y in country B. Then who has absolute advantage? A has absolute advantage in producing Y also. So this is the situation, because this cannot be solved in absolute cost advantage theory, right? Because A has absolute advantage in producing both commodity X and Y, because it is 30 and 45 when it was 60 and 50 in country B. Okay, that's why we are taking comparative cost, not absolute cost. What is comparative cost? Comparative cost of two products. So here we have X and Y. So we are making a comparative cost by dividing 30 divided by 45. I mean, in comparison with Y, we are taking 45. Then 30 divided by 45 given there, 0.67 is the comparative cost of X. It means that 0.67 unit of Y should be sacrificed to produce 1 unit of X. Or else we can say that 1X is equal to 0.67Y. Okay. Then what about in Y? Y comparative cost is 45 divided by 30. Okay, then it is 1.5. 1.5 Y is equal to 1X. That is a comparative cost. The same case we can see in the case of B. Comparative cost is equal to 60 divided by 50, 1.2. Then Y 50 divided by 60 is equal to 0.83. So we got four numbers: 0.67, 1.5, 1.2, 0.83. Then tell me which one is higher in producing commodity X. In producing commodity X, comparative cost in country A is 0.67. Clear? But comparative cost in B is 1.2. Which one is lower? I mean, A has comparative advantage in producing commodity X. But what about the Y? Comparative cost in producing Y is equal to 1.5 in country A, then 0.83 in country B. It means comparative cost is less in country B. So now the problem is solved, because A has comparative advantage in X and B has comparative advantage in Y. They can mutually trade each other. So this is the idea of comparative advantage theory. So here also you can see that if A1 divided by A2 less than 1, okay, I forgot to give 1. So if A1 divided by A2 is less than 1, then the condition in absolute was the B1 divided by B2 should be greater than 1. I hope you remember. But here it is not there. B1 divided by B2 is also less than 1. So in a whole we can say that 0.5 is less than 0.9, less than 1. Then also, according to the comparative advantage theory, the trade is possible. But the trade is not possible when A1 divided by A2 is equal to B1 divided by B2. Trade will not be possible. So you can check with any example. Okay, so the comparative cost can be said as also opportunity cost. It can also said as opportunity cost. 1X is equal to 0.67Y, nothing but the opportunity cost. Okay, so according to this theory, A should export X and import Y, and B should export Y and import X, according to comparative advantage. So in autarky means if there is no trade, happens, then what will happen? In country A, 1X will be exchanged for 0.67Y, we said, and 1Y will be exchanged for 1.5X. Okay, also we seen. Then in country B, 1X will be exchanged for 1.2Y, and 1Y will be exchanged for 0.83X. If there is no trade, they will exchange each other. That's it. Then the value will be like this. But here, if the trade happens, there is a possibility of mutual gain. See, in the country A, 1x was exchanged for 0.67y, but instead it can be exchanged with another country B, then 1x can be exchanged for 1.2y. Right? Both are gaining. Then in the second case, you can see that in the country B, 1y was exchanged for 0.83x. Okay, but it can be exchanged for 1.5x with another country. Okay, so through this exchange, both the countries will be getting benefit. That is the idea. So that's why we have given in the last 1x is equal to, if with the trade 1x is equal to 1.2y, and in the second case 1y is equal to 1.5x. So both the countries are gaining through the trade. So this also can be seen here, gain from the foreign trade if it is internal barter rate, IBR. Internal barter rate means the good exchange of goods and services in the same country. Then 1x is equal to 0.67y. But if for the external barter rate, it will be 1x is equal to 1.2y. Then the gain will be EBR minus IBR is equal to 0.53y per unit of x. Other also we can say in the same with the same example. Is it clear for you? Okay, so with the trade, there is a possibility of mutual gain for both the countries. They can exchange their goods and both the countries can gain. Okay. So this is the theory. Then there are, even though we said that it could, answer or it could solve the problem of absolute cost advantage theory, but still there are limitations for this theory also. Firstly, labor is not homogeneous. Can we say that two labors are homogeneous or their productivity is same? No, absolutely no. Because the productivity of one person might be different from another, and the ability of one person and the health of one person might be different from another person. Then the labor is also not homogeneous as in the case. Okay, the secondly, labor not only the factor of production that we discussed, there are some other factors also. Then here all the analysis are based on supply side, because cost is mainly concerned, cost advantage. But there is no, the theory did not talk about, or the theory did not consider the demand side. And the theory did not talk about how the price is determined or what quantity to be traded. These all are not the concern of this trade theory. Then nextly, invalid labor theory of value. So labor theory of value, we can't judge the value of all the products. So there are some other factors also. Okay, so that is also not true. Labor theory of value. Then the next is cost of production is ignored. In some of the future trade theories, we will explain how the transportation cost is important in deciding the trade. So here the cost of transportation is also ignored. Then specialization. Okay, as far as the theory is concerned, one country is producing cloth and one country has a comparative advantage in producing cloth, and one country has a comparative advantage in producing wheat. The theory says that they should specialize in the production of that commodity and they should export it. They should not produce two goods. They should produce only one good and they should export and import the other goods. But it may not be possible, because the specialization is limited by the size of the countries. Suppose that India is a very big country and we are trading with Sri Lanka, suppose, and Sri Lanka is producing coffee, and we are producing like wheat. So what will happen? I mean, we can produce wheat and we can supply, according to the demands or according to the needs of Sri Lanka. We can export the wheat for them, because we are very large country. So our productive capacity is also very huge. So we can supply whatever they want. But what about the coffee? Sri Lanka is a very small country. I mean, if as far as India is concerned, we need large amount of coffee, because for all the people. So all this amount may not be available, or it may not be possible to produce all this amount of coffee in Sri Lanka. So we will import some coffee powder from Sri Lanka. Also we may depend some other countries for coffee. So what I say, so the specialization is also limited according to the size of the countries. If it is country is big, or whether the country is small, so the specialization is also should be decided according to that. So if it is not possible to buy all the commodity from one country, we should depend other country also. And also there is a possibility that normally the countries like wheat, all the countries will produce some kind of wheat and basic products or basic agriculture products in their country. So they won't fully specialize in production of one commodity. So this is also, there are some limitations. Then the nature of the goods limits specialization. Yeah, this is what I explained. Because some of the goods we may need it for self-sufficiency. So it is not possible that you produce whole wheat yourself and give us. It is not possible, because in some cases if they are not providing the wheat, then this country will be in trouble. So the basic commodities, some of the commodities all the countries will produce. Then the static nature of the theory. So here there is a static nature, means all the factor endowments and production technology and full employment, and there are so many assumptions which there is no any change, which does not accept any change. So there is a static nature in this theory. So these all are the limitations of this theory. I hope this is clear for you. So this is a one example or one question which you can solve yourself, whether there is a possibility of gainful trade for both countries are the question. So you can check it. Then these are the references for both absolute cost advantage theory and also comparative advantage theory. So I think it's clear for you. Thank you all. Thank you very much for listening this video. We hope we will see in the future videos.